So I was sitting, reflecting on all that's taken place over the last, let's just say 6 weeks. And in the last 6 weeks, we've had Thanksgiving, Christ the King Sunday, the full season of Advent, Christmas, the season of Christmas, because, you know, Christmas isn't just one day. There's 12 days of it, right? You know the song, 12 days. And then we get to Epiphany, which was yesterday, and so we celebrate it today because it's the first Sunday closest to the 6th day, or the 6th day of January, which is the 12th day of Christmas, right? So here we are at Epiphany, the beginning of the season that no one really pays attention to or cares much about, other than the fact that we know by Epiphany we're supposed to have our Christmas decorations down and boxed and packaged away till next year, right? Everybody good on that so far? You got your trees down? You got everything boxed away?
No.
What's boxed?
Yeah, there we go. It's kind of not put away yet, but it's boxed up because we know by Epiphany we're moving on, right? Well, I was just thinking about that, and thinking about in this 6 weeks how much happens in the church and how much happens in our lives. And I was thinking, you know, we've gone through, I think, 4 different liturgical seasons. And yet, when I think about the world at large, and when I think about, you know, the people that I meet on the streets, and those people who are jostling me with their shopping carts at HEB, and you know, the folks that I run into at the Exxon, I'm sitting here thinking, you know, for most people, they don't know anything about Christ the King or Advent. They probably know Christmas, but Epiphany, all these things are foreign to them. But what they all experience, and what we experience with them, is what I would call the season of longing, or the season of longing hearts. I mean, isn't that really what we've been through? A season of longing hearts. Starting the day after Thanksgiving, ironically, when we celebrate our blessings, we go into the biggest shopping day, or at least it was until this year. Now everyone's shopping online, but the biggest shopping day, the biggest shopping weekend of the year, right after Thanksgiving. Because there are things that people want. Somewhere about mid-November, going right up to, I would say, probably December 23rd, children are busy making out their Christmas wish lists. These days, a lot of that happens online as well. We used to write a piece of paper, put it in an envelope, and actually mail it to Santa. I think now everyone just emails it or texts it in. I don't think anybody actually sends letters to Santa anymore. But starting mid-November into December 23rd, kids are making up their wish lists, the longings of their heart. I remember one year in particular, what I desperately wanted was the Hot Wheels Supercharger track. Anybody remember Hot Wheels? Yeah? So Hot Wheels were tiny little toy race cars, and they came on this flexible plastic orange track. And you could, it was gravity fed, so you always started at the top of a table or a chair, and then, like a roller coaster, gravity would take the car down, and it would pick up speed, and you can make loop-to-loops and clover leaves and all these kind of different track designs for the car. Well, I was really big into these Hot Wheel race cars, and then one year they came out with a Supercharger, which was a battery-powered little thing that when the car rolled in one end, it was almost like those car wash rubber foam thing. It would roll around and it would shoot it out the other end. So now you could double the size of your Hot Wheel track. You started on the table, it would go down, a loop-to-loop, cloverleaf, it would start losing steam, and you put the supercharger right there, and then it would shoot it out. It would do a whole new set of loop-to-loops and cloverleafs, and I just thought that was the greatest thing. So I started clipping pictures of it out of the Sears catalog, out of the JCPenney's catalog. Every place that I could find a picture of this thing, I would clip it out, and I would post them on the refrigerator in the kitchen, and I would leave them on Mom and Dad's bedside. And I remember I actually folded one up and put it in my letter to Santa, just so there was no confusion about what I was asking for. I wanted to be clear here. It was the longing of my heart. And when I received that gift on Christmas morning, I was so thrilled with it for about 5 or 6 days. whether we are children or whether we're adults, when Advent and Christmas time rolls around, it is a season of longing. Now, as we mature, sometimes it's not the Hot Wheels or even the big sports cars. There are other things that we long for. This past Christmas was a different sort of Christmas for my family. My mother passed away right around Thanksgiving this year. And my brother-in-law, Ray, his mother passed away 1 week before Christmas. So this was the first family Christmas for all of us without both of our mothers. And while it was joyful, it was great to be, there was some people missing at the table. And so the longing of our hearts this year was a whole different type of experience for us. It wasn't the things, it wasn't the gifts under the tree that mattered. It was the love and the reunion and the being together with loved ones that was the longing of our hearts this Christmas. Perhaps you've experienced those kind of Christmases where you have been separated from those that you love, and you're either waiting for that great reunion for folks to fly in for the holidays, or for you to travel to be with people, or perhaps that's not possible, and so the longing of your heart is unsatisfied because you can't be with the ones that you love and that you miss on Christmas Day. Whether it's loved ones, or whether it's Hot Wheels, or whether it's Barbies, or whether it's PlayStations, or whatever the hot gadget is, the reality is, during Christmas, it's a season of longing. We all want something at Christmas, don't we? And then what happens? 2 days after Christmas, boom! We start working on our New Year's resolutions, right? And now instead of focusing on the stuff that goes under the tree, our loved ones, suddenly we have the longing of our hearts for a better life. Because that's really what New Year's resolutions are about, right? And so we jump into this another, I would say, phase 2 of the season of longing. The New Year's resolutions. And we all make resolutions. Sometimes we don't want to tell people, that we make resolutions, but we all make resolutions. Whether it's to lose weight, or save more money, or read our Bible every day, or call our mom once a week, or whatever it is, we all come to this point of the year, we say, well, I am going to be a better person in 2017 than I was, in 2018 than I was in 2017, right? It's just another expression of the longing of our hearts for a better life, to be better people, to reach our potential, the potential that our grandparents always saw in us. And so we ramp up our season of longing, and that usually lasts until, what, mid-February, right? And what happens in mid-February? We take all those self-help books and we return them to the library and we check out books on self-acceptance, right? And isn't that pretty much what happens in mid-February? We kind of give up on some of those resolutions, and we become resigned to the state of affairs. Well, I was thinking about all that, and I was thinking, throughout life there seems to be this reoccurring cycle that happens to us. And it's most evident, I think, this time of year, but it's a continual thing that happens over and over and over again. And sometimes these cycles last weeks, and sometimes these cycles last years, and there are cycles within cycles, but there's a cycle that we all tend to experience in life. It starts with the longings of our heart, whether those longings are for physical things, whether they are for reunions with loved ones, whether they are for a better life, whether they are for changes in our community of faith. There's longings of our heart that are very real and have the power to drive us. And what happens? We pursue these longings until there is either fulfillment or not. And then, after fulfillment, always comes disappointment and disillusionment. Because what we most desire in our heart, once we get it, rarely meets our expectations. Rarely. Even when we get exactly what we want. I discovered that the Hot Wheels Supercharger was a piece of junk. And that after a couple of hundred cars running through, it fell apart. The little rubber things that catch the car, you know, they got worn out because that little rubber foam thing hitting the metal, it got smooth and worn out, and you can't buy replacement parts for it. We all hit that wall of dissatisfaction and disappointment and disillusionment, which leads to the final stage of either resolve to the way things are, all right, I am never going to lose this last 10 pounds, or a restart, in which we focus on a different longing of our heart. Okay, I will never finish this book. Let me start a new magazine. That might be easier. And so we restart with a new longing, a new desire, pursue that until we reach fulfillment or not, until we reach disappointment and disillusionment, and then we hit the restart or the resolve button once again. And we do this over and over and over again throughout our lives. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Longing, fulfillment, disappointment, resolve, or perhaps restart. I started to think about why this is, and why this is true for seemingly everyone. We all go through these stages. And it seems to me that the longings of our heart are there for a purpose. I'm sure you've heard sermons and speeches and gone to Bible studies and had Sunday school lessons about the evil desires of the heart. And there are things that we desire that we shouldn't. But I think that God has created us with longing hearts for a purpose. So in this morning's scripture reading, familiar story about Nicodemus coming to Jesus. Nicodemus is a man with a longing in his heart. We don't know a whole lot about Nicodemus. We do know that he had some financial resources. He was a man of wealth and means. We know that he was educated. We know that he was a leader in the synagogue. We know that he was well respected within the Jewish community. This is a man who had succeeded. He had taken all the right steps. He had accomplished all the right achievements academically, socially, financially, politically, you name it. This man had done it right. And he had risen to the top of what was possible for a person. And yet, here he is at night, coming to Jesus with the longings of his heart. Despite everything he had, everything that he had accomplished, despite all the people who admired him, looked up to him, wished they were like him, here he is with a deep emptiness, with a longing in his heart that just is not able to be fulfilled. People have sometimes asked, why did Nicodemus come to Jesus at night? What's that all about? They didn't have street lights. People didn't go out. The only people who were out at night back then were people who were up to something bad. And so people didn't go out at night. And so here is this very, established man going out at night. It's kind of shady. I think why he went to Jesus at night was because he was afraid of being disappointed. He didn't want to make a big spectacle. If a man like that had gone to Jesus during the day, it would have been front page tabloid news. But he was afraid that Jesus might not have the answer for him. So he goes at night so that there's no paparazzi, if you will. There's no one to witness it. There's no one to see what a disappointment lay in store. And so with hesitancy, but with a longing in his heart that drives him out in the middle of the night, Nicodemus comes to Jesus. Now, John surely does not record word for word what took place in that conversation. But basically what happens is Nicodemus says, look, I've done all the stuff I'm supposed to do. I followed the law and commandments. I've been a leader in the synagogue. I have put my trust in God. I have done what I was told to do. Why is my life so barren? And then Jesus has this response. It says to him basically, no one can see the kingdom of God. No one can participate in the fullness of God unless he is born again. Now, there's a little wordplay going on here. The word that Jesus uses here, anathem, the Greek word anathem, can be translated born from above or born again, as in a second physical rebirth. And it's clear that Jesus is having a little fun because Nicodemus is taking it one way. How can a man when he is old be born again? You know, what foolishness is this? And Jesus is saying, no, 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 born from above. But this is one of these jokes in the Bible that comes across much better in the Greek than it does in the English. This is one of those points that John wanted his readers to chuckle at when they saw this little exchange here. Unfortunately, 100 or so years ago, some Christians got a hold of this whole thing of anathem and created this whole born-again movement. And instead of using it to bring people to Christ, used it as a wedge to divide Christians into those who were born again and those who weren't, when that's not at all what is meant here. Jesus tells Nicodemus, you must be born from above. In other words, you need to live a different life. You need a new life. You need a new heart. Now, we're not sure from the conversation how much of this Nicodemus really catches all about. He seems to go away perplexed, confused, perhaps comforted. It isn't until after Jesus' death when we discover that Nicodemus is one of the people who gathers to purchase the tomb and to get Jesus off the cross and into the tomb. And it's there that we discover that Nicodemus himself has been born again, born from above, has had a change of heart. Nicodemus represents everyone who has a deep longing in their heart. A longing that has not been satisfied and cannot be satisfied by the things that this world has to offer, whether it's Hot Wheels or even family. There are longings of the heart that only God can fulfill. St. Augustine of Hippo, in his most famous writings, kind of a diary thing called Confessions. It's available online. If you haven't read it, it's a beautiful, beautiful work. St. Augustine of Hippo once said that our hearts are restless until they find their rest in God. Our hearts are restless until they find their rest in God. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. The longings of our heart will never be satisfied unless we turn those longings to God. The problem is not that we long for things. The problem is not that we have desires and ambitions and hopes and dreams. The problem is that we long for the wrong things. We desire things that don't satisfy. Our hopes and dreams are limited. We need to have larger ambitions. We need to have greater hopes and dreams. We need to have expanded longings. We should not be satisfied with anything less than God himself.
Amen.
Because, as Augustine said, our hearts will always be restless until they rest in God. So how do we make that happen? How do we turn our ambitions, our hopes, our dreams, our desires, our longings into something godly? Well, that's what we're going to talk about over the next couple of weeks. So over the next couple of weeks, we're going to have a little series called The Heart of the Matter. And it's all about how we transform our hearts and how we participate in God's agenda, how we embrace God's hopes and dreams, how we live into God's desires for our lives and for the world. And in investing ourselves in God, we discover that our restless hearts are calm and peaceful, and our longings are fulfilled. So Jesus said, wherever your treasure is, there will your hearts be also. A lot of people get that wrong. A lot of people quote Jesus saying, where your heart is, there will your treasure be also. And that makes sense. But that's not what Jesus said. Jesus says, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And there's a lot of truth to that. Now, treasure certainly means your financial abilities. Whether you are a wealthy person, or middle class, or blue collar, or barely getting by, whatever your financial means are, certainly you need to look at what you're doing with that. Where are you investing that? But treasure is much more than just how much money you've got. If you really want to know about somebody's treasure, there are two places you look. Not just the bank statement, but you look at their day planner as well, right? What's the one thing that is more scarce and more valuable than even money? Time, right? Time. I would like to encourage you to begin this week by exploring your bank statement, but also your day planner. Where are you investing your treasure? There are a lot of good places to invest treasure. There are a lot of good causes, a lot of good things, a lot of good people. There are a lot of good places. But here's the thing. Sometimes good things are the enemy of great things. You understand what I'm saying? Sometimes we sacrifice the greatest things, the things that truly fulfill, the things that bring purpose and meaning and satisfaction for less than things. For instance, I really like cookies. My wife is trying to convince me that I should eat more protein in my diet. I like to invest in cookies. But I also know that in this case, the good thing really is preventing me from the great thing. So I want to encourage you to look at where you're investing all of the treasures of your life and examine that, because where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And as Augustine said, until your heart rests in God, it will always be restless. We'll continue this next week. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.